Hello and welcome to Uncovering Our Hidden History. My name is Anna. I'm a genealogist as well as a historical researcher, and I created this channel in order to be able to have a place to share all of the things that I've been finding out over the last 5 years in hopes of finding like-minded researchers who would find this information valuable to their own research. And so welcome if you're new to this channel. We're very glad to have you here. And today we are doing World War III Part 3E. This is probably one of a little bit longer, well, I don't know. Anyway, we are going to be continuing on with Part 3E, and so you're certainly welcome to watch this video, but you probably are going to be lost with the information, so I highly recommend that you click on the channel's icon and go to the playlist. And I have two other playlists there, the Kingdom of Israel in Tartaria and the Americas, and then the Kingdom of Judah. And then this is my third series I'm working on, which is the 3 World Wars, based upon Albert Pike's letter to Italian diplomat Giuseppe Mazzini in 1871, outlining 3 world wars. And so it would just probably be better for you, because I'm doing these sequentially, if you start with Part 1, the very first video I did covering World War I. And if you're wondering why I am dressed like a Hawaiian Airlines flight attendant, it will make more sense to you as we go on. So with that being said, let's get going. Okay, well, I hope you all had a blessed week, that you were able to find little joy in the little moments during the week. And so here we are again, and we are going to be wrapping up the John Coleman, sorry, my brain's a little foggy today. We are wrapping up the John Coleman document, the hierarchy of the Committee of 300. We've gone through the bulk of it, but I want to go over just the last little bit, which is the committee's plans for us, humanity. And so I do need to tell you, this is going to be more of a somber video. This is going to be, we're going to be covering some darker elements. And so this is, I would definitely say this is not for children. As parents, you can watch it first, the first go around, and then you can decide if you have, teenage children and want them to watch it, it's fine. I'm going to leave that up to your discretion, but for the first time through, this video is definitely not for children, just based on some of the subject matter that we're going to be talking about. So I want to make sure I put that out first and foremost, because not everybody checks the video description where I put those disclaimers. So just want to let you know, adults only for right now, okay? All right, let me go ahead, pop up my slideshow for us. And again, if you're new to the channel, one of the reasons why I do slideshows is because I believe that a picture, my mantra is, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so the easiest way to do that instead of just sitting and talking at you about things, I would prefer to show you, because our brains are created and wired. We like pictures. Our brains like pictures. And so I would rather show you what I have found rather than just tell you. And please feel free as we go along. You're welcome to take screenshots of any of these slides so that you can use them for your own research or to pass on to others. So again, we are on the Third World War Agenda, Part 3E. Here's our fair use warning, just saying that I can borrow from other researchers or other authors, whatever, for the purpose of criticism, news reporting, teaching, etc., without infringing on any copyright laws. Okay. Again, this is the document this is the third video in this series that we've been going through Dr. John Coleman's The Conspirators' Hierarchy, the Story of the Committee of 300. Okay. So, I've already given you the bulk of the information in the other two videos. So, most of what I covered has already happened, because Dr. John Coleman wrote that book or published it in 1991 or 1993, somewhere in there. So most of what he talks about has already happened, although there are things that we can see in our day and age. But what I want to go over today is what are their plans for humanity, for us, because this, more than anything, is what we are seeing right now. This is in play, and this is all part of their Third World War agenda. For one thing, we are already in the one world government. Okay. They have a one world army, which is NATO. They have a one world bank. Let me rephrase that. They are moving towards a one world bank. And in my opinion, I think if we see the whole banking system collapse as we know it, because they've been trying for some time, their plans are to crash it so they can put everybody on a digital currency, okay, because they want to, let me just say this real quick, hold on. Part of what the jabby jab things were about was, especially certain companies, Moderna was one, where they were putting out mRNA vaccines, which would change the DNA. And the CEO of that company was very, didn't even try to hide that. But they couched it as, we can change the DNA, we can eradicate cancer, we can eradicate all of these negative illnesses. But when you start messing with the human genome, darker elements can come to play there. So their whole goal, and a lot of what 2020 was about and what we've been seeing since, with the trails of chem in the sky and the things in the water and the things in our food, and the jabby jab things, it's all to change our human DNA. They want to move us to transhumanism, right? They want to get rid of the organic human being, which is majority of us. And so what they want to do with all of these things is to redo our mRNA, our DNA, and then hook us into an operating system. And so when the banks start rolling out these digital currencies, this is what we're seeing with what people are volunteering to do in Sweden with the chip, okay, and the other things they're doing. And so eventually what they want to do is hook the humans into this as well so that they can control us. And I think, according to Catherine Austin Fitts, and if you don't know who she is, I highly recommend Googling Catherine Austin Fitts, and she's been on the forefront of all this, and she was talking about this as it was happening in 2020. But the ultimate goal is, if you are not a compliant slave in the future, then they can lock you out of your bank account. And if you continue to not comply, then they can flip your switch off as well, if they have managed to turn you into an operating system. So that's what I mean when I talk about that's what they're moving, wanting to move towards. But anyway, so and then lastly, they are also in process with the one world religion, which is it's not just Freemasonry. Freemasonry is just one of the secret societies. The one world religion will be Kabbalah, with their god Lucifer at its head. This is why they want to destroy all of the true Christians, the true followers of Messiah. And then we talked about on the last video, again, if you haven't watched that, we talked about how they've infiltrated all of the churches since the 1920s. And so they're subverting and taking over from within. And that is well underway as well. Okay. So this is, again, part of the committee's manifesto for humanity. They say at least 4 billion useless eaters, and again, that's all of us, right, shall be eliminated by the year 2050. So if that's accurate, then that's, they plan to have this done in 25 more years, within the next 25 years. If the Most High allows them to. Okay, so at least 4 billion useless eaters shall be eliminated by the year 2050 by means of limited wars, organized epidemics of fatal rapid-acting diseases, and starvation. Energy, food, and water shall be kept at subsistence levels for the non-elite, starting with the white populations of Western Europe and North America, and then spreading to other races. The populations of Canada, Western Europe, and the United States will be decimated more rapidly than on any other continents, until the world's population reaches a manageable level of 1 billion, of which 500 million, so that's half, will consist of Chinese and Japanese races, selected because they are people who have been regimented for centuries and who are accustomed to obeying authority without question. So, Asian friends, I suggest let that make you really, really mad, and don't roll over and fall for that. Don't make it easy. None of us should. Stop being so compliant. From time to time, there shall be artificially contrived food and water shortages and medical care to remind the masses of us useless eaters that our very existence depends on the goodwill of the Committee of 300. So we should be grateful to them, right? After the destruction of housing, auto, steel, and heavy good industries, there shall be limited housing. And industries of any kind allowed to remain shall be under the direction of NATO's Club of Rome, as shall all scientific and space exploration development, limited to the elite under the control of the Committee of 300. Space weapons of all former nations shall be destroyed along with nuclear weapons, because remember what we learned last week. They can't have nuclear weapons, not because it's dangerous, but because it's a form of energy and it allows nations to be independent of foreign aid and of these people. So they have to destroy all nuclear weapons so that no nation can remain autonomous. The United States will be flooded by peoples of alien cultures who will eventually overwhelm white America, people with no concept of what the United States Constitution stands for, and who will, in consequence, do nothing to defend it, and in whose minds the concept of liberty and justice is so weak as to matter very little. And by that, by alien cultures, we're not talking about space aliens. We're talking about immigrants from other countries who could care less what the United States stands for. So that's why we keep seeing all the borders being flooded by people from other countries without vetting them to even know if they're good people or not. And then again, food and shelter shall be the main concern. So I saw this on YouTube, the Jimmy Dore show. It says, here's why your electric bill keeps going up and up and up. Anybody else wondering why it's so hard to pay for your utilities, such as gas and electricity? Well, we can thank BlackRock for that. And we know BlackRock is one of the committee's agencies. Okay, so we're going to take a pause here, and I have a short video I want you to watch, and then we'll come back and talk about that. Okay.
Is to design neighborhoods so everything you need, from your work, your groceries, your schools, your healthcare, is a 15-minute walk or bike ride away. And it sounds really convenient and even utopian until you realize what it takes to force that vision into reality. Anna?
I disagree. 15-minute cities don't sound utopian. 15-minute cities basically focus on the idea of housing density, which is packing as many people as possible in a small area. Mm-hmm. Everything is within reach, yes, but you do give up some comforts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So earmuff the leftists because they love this idea. I hate this idea. I'll explain why after I walk you through what this idea actually entails. So, some housing policies go even further than doing common sense things, like building affordable housing or just increasing housing supply. And if you live in a liberal city, chances are that you've already begun to see signs of infrastructure development, of what's being referred to as these 15-minute cities. So what is it? Basically, no more single-family homes on a lot. Apartment building. Density is really the name of the game. They want to get rid of vehicles and instead replace vehicles with people riding their bicycles or public transit. And again, it's about housing, density, public transit, and kind of keeping people super local where they don't have to travel any further than 15 minutes away to get what they need. So here's a video that kind of explains the thinking behind this. Take a look.
Imagine a city where everything you need is just a short walk or bike ride away. A place where work, groceries, schools, and parks are all within a 15-minute radius. Welcome to the concept of a 15-minute city. Currently, 16 cities around the world have committed to implementing a 15-minute city structure, which many believe will be the way of the future. Paris has taken major strides toward that goal by constructing more than 600 miles of protected bike lanes and introducing more green spaces. That kind of infrastructure encourages sustainable ways of getting around, contributing to reduced traffic congestion and a healthier urban ecosystem.
Okay, so you watch that video and 15-minute cities actually look pretty lovely, right? They look
green space,
tolerable, excellent. Okay, keep in mind that this model has been successful in European countries. Mm-hmm. European countries do things differently from American cities. We're going to revisit that in just a second, but first, more details. There's this problem right now with vacant malls. And the idea is, well, why don't we use this as an opportunity to actually have this 15-minute city idea come to fruition? And there's actually an example of it. I want to show you how one mall was actually converted into housing with everything available to its residents. It's right there in the palm of their hands. Let me know if you think this looks good.
Amy Hinion has been living on the top floor of a 3-story mall in Providence, Rhode Island for the past 2.5 years.
What's it like to live at the mall?
It's really great. It's cool to be part of such a historic building and knowing that every single one of these units used to be a shop of some kind.
But living in a converted store does present some challenges.
Here is my very tiny kitchen. It is
very small, but it is workable. And one of the interesting things about the units in the building is that because of codes, you can't have any cooking devices with an open flame. So none of the units have stoves or ranges.
Oh, wow.
Do you ever have any concerns about privacy?
It's something you get used to living in the building, having people coming and going. Everybody has blinds in their apartment that they can raise or lower as they like.
Yeah. So no, my answer is no. And,
Wow.
and this is why, okay? Younger generations are like being pressured to accept a degraded quality of life from previous generations. The green space, I agree, Amy, looks beautiful.
I was being hyperbole. I was speaking.
Oh, okay, I didn't pick up on that.
I didn't either. I was
Sorry,
like-
sometimes my sarcasm is so dry. That's probably happened a bunch of times.
So look, I love parks, right?
Yeah.
I love green space. I have nothing against green space. By the way, I just got an electric bike. I have no problem with the bike lanes. The bike lanes are fantastic. So nothing against these things.
Yeah.
However, the green space is supposed to be communal and it's supposed to replace what I dream about having one day, which is a yard, right? Which is a place where I can have a little bit of privacy, where I can grow vegetables, where I can just enjoy a little bit of peace and quiet. That's what I aspire toward, right?
Yes.
If that's ripped away from you, what is the point of working hard? I'm just gonna coast at that point.
Right.
If like my quality of life is gonna be garbage, no matter how hard I work, because I'm gonna be forced into living in like an apartment building or a condo building or a building in general for the rest of my life, there's nothing to work harder for, really.
I feel you. It reminds me, so in a previous episode, we talked about how when you trade freedom for security, you deserve neither. And it's the exact same when you trade freedom for convenience, you deserve neither. I would rather be slightly inconvenienced and have all of my freedoms intact than to be slightly inconvenienced. Maybe you need to walk a little bit further. Maybe you need to catch a lift. Maybe you need to ride a bike a little bit further.
Maybe you do want to be in your car and go to work. And by the way, here's the other thing. We live in America, and let's just take a step back and look at the trends among ordinary American workers.
I want to ask you guys to put on a tin hat for a second.
Okay.
Okay, now this comes from Grant Cardone. So we
Friend of the pod.
Okay, right. So Grant, after the fires, he's like, this is all by design, right? And he puts out this tweet. We end up talking to him about it. It's a great podcast. Maybe we could link to it in the show notes.
Yeah.
I have a further conversation with Grant Cardone in depth. Like, what are you talking about? What do you mean it's by design? And he connects 15-minute cities to what's going on in California. So now I know you think Newsom could never pull it off, and maybe that's true. But here's the argument. That California is essentially going to become a failed state. And I want to talk about what...
Eventually?
Oh, okay, great point. Okay, so hold on. So listen, so what does it mean to be a failed state? So government paralysis, an inability to maintain law and order, to enforce laws, to balance budgets or manage essential services like water, power, fire, and police, a mass exodus, accelerated flight of businesses, taxpayers, and middle-class residents, worsening the tax-based collapse, rising crime and corruption. I mean, it's like literally exactly what's happening, right? Infrastructure decay, wildfires, blackouts, homelessness, failing schools, public systems crumble under debt and mismanagement. This is California. Now, arguably, the federal government would have to intervene. If you ask yourself, who would benefit from such a thing? Well, I actually asked Grant, right? Like, why would we want this to happen? Why is this happening? Who would benefit from it is real estate developers.
Yes.
It's freaking real estate developers, okay?
And you know who they
foreign
donate to?
countries.
And they want to buy on
Candidates.
Well,
It's all
okay. So that is who's going to benefit from this. So real estate moguls and global investors will scoop up land for pennies. Federal agencies can seize control of critical infrastructure. Technocrats would have a blank slate to roll out their smart city experiments. Cut to, is it happening? Ready? Do you remember Newsom dancing in the video? Connor, see if you can find this. Vinny made fun of it. As the fires are going on, he's like, we're talking to prospectors, we're looking at deals,
Oh, I
we're talking to
remember
lawyers,
this. Yep.
we're talking to prospectors. Okay, I thought he meant we're gonna block all of this. I thought, no way is he telling everybody that as homes are still smoldering, he's talking to friggin' prospectors. Cut to this son of a bitch just gave $101 million to build low-income housing in the Palisades.
So
for homeless facilities.
Hold on. So there was so much backlash to that the state legislature
Did they drop it?
Yeah.
It just happened a freaking week ago.
I know, but like 2 days ago, there was a report on Fox 11,
It's crazy.
local station, where they dropped it because there was so much backlash.
Good.
Look, I'm in favor of building shelters and housing and for the homeless and all of that. I'm not against it. But we're talking about a situation in which the people in the Pacific Palisades desperately want to rebuild their homes.
Yeah, and they make it hard, so
and
they
they
tap out.
haven't been able to yet.
Yep.
There's all sorts of red tape that makes it difficult to rebuild.
Exactly.
So if you're someone who lost everything in the fires in January of this year, and you're hearing that the state legislature isn't taking care of you to help you build your home, and instead is like plotting for some other project in your area, how infuriating is that?
Can you play it? Here it is.
Some ideas about some land use concerns he has around speculators coming in. Some ideas about some land use concerns he has around speculators coming in. Some ideas about some land use concerns he has
around. We're working on it. We're working with legal teams, and he gets into how they're going to facilitate it. But the thing is, they make it impossible on purpose, so you tap out. I tapped out in 2018.
Just to reinforce what you're saying, I get that this sounds conspiratorial, but honestly, I think about COVID.
Oh my goodness. What did you think about that discussion? Let's take a little bit deeper look into what they were talking about there. So she says, I have a further conversation with Grant Cardone in depth. And I said, like, what are you talking about? What do you mean by it's by design? And then I'm going to go down to the bottom of that. And she says, but here's the argument that California is essentially going to become a failed state. And I want to talk about it. She says, so what does it mean to become a failed state? And it's the government's paralysis, its inability to maintain law and order, to enforce laws, to balance budgets, and to manage essential services like water, power, fire, police, and a mass exodus accelerated of businesses, taxpayers, and middle-class residents. So, like in California, during the past 3 years or so, there's been a mass exodus of people, mainly conservatives, fleeing California. And yes, Texans, I know you're tired of them coming there, but you have to understand this is commie California, okay? Commie California. So conservative Christians and conservative families in general are fleeing here. They want to be able to carry a weapon in order to protect their families without being thrown in jail. They want to move to places where they can find other like-minded conservative people. They're not meaning to drive up your housing and all of the other things that have become frustrations. They just want desperately to be out of here, because while it's beautiful in California and you can't beat the weather, although maybe not lately, but the quality of life here is horrific. It's extremely, extremely expensive here. And people can't afford to be here anymore. Okay, the homeless issue is out of control and nothing's being done about it. So anyway, moving on. She says, rising crime. So the worsening of the tax base collapse, rising crime and corruption. It's like literally exactly what's happening. And there's infrastructure decay, wildfires, blackouts, homelessness, failing schools, public systems crumbling under debt and mismanagement. This is California. Now, arguably, the federal government would have to intervene. So then the question that they began to talk about was, who's going to benefit from all this? If California becomes a failed state, who benefits? Okay. And from her conversation with Grant Cardone, what they basically came down to is it's the real estate moguls. The real estate moguls and the global investors will scoop up land for pennies on the dollar. And this is what they're doing in every place where they're creating these natural disasters. Because, yep, you better believe that they're involved. I'm going to remind you of that in a second. Federal agencies could seize control of critical infrastructure. Technocrats would have a blank slate to roll out their smart city experiments. Okay. So I want to go back and remind you of what we covered in, I think it was last week's video from Dr. Coleman. He said the Tavistock Institute at Sussex University in London sites is owned and controlled by the Royal Institute for International Affairs, whose Hofjuden in America, so whose lackey, whose puppet is Henry Kissinger. Now, this is what I want you to pay attention to, though. The Eagle Star Group, which changed its name to the Star Group after the close of the Second World War, is composed of a group of major international companies involved in overlapping and interfaced areas such as insurance companies, banking, real estate, entertainment, and high technology, including cybernetics, electronic communications, maybe direct energy weapons, who knows? But all of this falls under the Star Group, and we can see them working hand in hand. Okay? So when they're talking about who benefits from these natural disasters that are destroying places and creating failed cities or failed states, it's this group of people within the Star Group. All of these tentacles within the Star Group come in to get their piece of the pie, right? All it takes is insurance companies to say, oh, we're not going to reimburse you for that. We're not going to pay for you to rebuild, right? And then the real estate moguls come in. Hey, since it's going to take, 4 to 6 months, maybe up to a year for you to get your power, water, whatever going on, and that's even if the people can rebuild or redo that, why not just sell your house? Here, we'll pay you X amount of dollars, and we'll buy your house, we'll buy your land from you. So if they can do that within whole neighborhoods, for them it's pennies on the dollar, and that kind of backs these people into a corner, because if they can't rebuild, if the insurance companies aren't going to pay for them to rebuild or fix what needs to be fixed, and if the utility companies are saying, oh, we're not going to be able to get water back to you. We're seeing this especially with the Hurricane Helene situation in North Carolina. Okay, it's all by design, and it's horrific. Okay, I want you to look at, this is a picture of the Malibu, from the Malibu fires in Malibu, California. And I want you to take a look at everywhere that I have the green arrows. So look at the top portion of this. You've got all of these burned out homes with burned out foundations left, right? Up at the top. And then just directly across the highway, on the other side, where the green arrow is pointing down, you've got a building completely intact, doesn't look charred, doesn't look like it was even touched by the fire whatsoever. And then just to the right of that, you've got more burned out buildings down to the foundation. And then further down near the bottom of the picture, where I have the double arrows pointing, on the left bottom corner, you've got this building, a little compound or building, whatever it is, completely intact. Doesn't look like like it was touched at all. And then right next to it, you have a pile of just ash and rubble. And same with the right bottom portion of the screen. You've got buildings over in the right portion still completely intact, sitting right next to burned out foundations and ash. Now, I'm not a rocket scientist, and I'm not a pyrotech, but when researching this, as far as I can tell, wildfires they don't discriminate. Naturally occurring wildfires do not discriminate. They usually burn everything in their path. They don't skip over houses and burn the house next door but leave one house intact. I think you would all agree about this. So we really have to ask ourselves, what are we really looking at here? We have to ask these questions, especially when this isn't just a one-time thing that has happened, right? So again, this is the Malibu fire, which has been the most recent, but let's look over, what about the Maui fire in 2023? And before that, back in, I want to say it was like 2017-ish in there, we have the Paradise, California fires. Now, to the left, look at the Maui fires. We've got burned out vehicles. Again, wildfires, naturally occurring wildfires, typically do not get hot enough to burn metal and to do this kind of damage. And then to the right, we're basically looking at the same thing in Paradise, California, or during what they called the campfires, right? This is a pattern, because we're seeing the same thing in Paradise, California, Maui, and the Malibu fires. They all look the same. So let's talk about the Maui fires. All of these disasters have been very, very troubling. They're all troubling. I have to say, though, that the Maui fire probably hit me the hardest, and I'm still grieving that. I know many, many people are, especially the people who live there and who live on the other islands over there. This one really shook me to my core because it impacted me in a personal way, which I will get to in just a little bit. So according to the news, the Lahaina wildfire in Maui, Hawaii, was the 5th deadliest fire in U.S. history with regards to lives lost. Okay, I have a video that I would like to show you guys right now, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
By climbing over the seawall and getting into the ocean. Many did die in their cars, but how and why? Conspiracy theories abounded. Related far-fetched theories have reported that alleged laser beams were programmed not to hit anything blue, explaining why so many blue beach umbrellas were left unscathed by the fires. The conspiracy theories gained momentum due to the fact that the wealthiest homes were left untouched. Then there are the fact that the deaths of that many people being unnecessary, and fingers have been pointed at the first responders, police chief, and mayor. Many residents criticized the police directly, who blocked the road access off Front Street, denying access to the highway where many of the vehicles were trapped and where most of the people lost their lives as their cars were burned, many exploding. The lack of communication between the police and fire departments, as well as conflicting orders, helped create the disaster. One of the more astonishing conspiracy theories was that both the fire and police departments were told to not allow the massive influx of evacuees onto the property of the wealthiest residents. It was proven that police and emergency personnel purposely blocked the evacuation routes so that working class people could not leave Lahaina proper and reach the sanctuary of higher elevation, stopping them from reaching the areas where the wealthiest properties were located and remained unaffected. Maui Police Chief John Pelletier responded to questions about reported road closures and apparent communications problems as Lahaina residents were trying to escape the fire on August 8th. Why were people contained in a bottleneck on the road? Why were they not allowed to leave and reach more safe, wealthy areas? Those who ignored the police and fire department barricades, preventing people from getting near the billionaire-owned properties, survived. Many of those who disobeyed and remained died trapped on the road. One commentator said, "As a firefighter for the last 30 years, as well as fire investigator inspector, I am appalled at this entire operation. I have heard real witnesses' accounts that anyone could listen to of people being directed into Front Street. This police chief should be fired, the mayor fired, the governor fired. Allow people to come in that care about the people and want to help. I would 100% come to help Maui get to the bottom of this." One person posted on social media, quote, "Lawyer here. Police chief still says not using sirens was a good idea. What about turning water off but keeping electricity on, blocking escape roads, and sending children home from school with instructions to shelter in place? This calls for criminal negligence prosecutions for all the decision makers." Conspiracy theorists on varying platforms have claimed the fires were planned as part of a strategic effort to weed out less wealthy residents on Maui and make room for multi-million-dollar developments. Some people claim that laser beams were to blame. As we mentioned before, one witness claimed this was a direct energy weapon assault. Many people believe this to be the method for the destruction, but are they reasonable? According to Renee DiResta, a research manager at Stanford University who studies misinformation, people often look for a way to make sense of the world when they are anxious or have a feeling of powerlessness. Theories that attribute the cause of a crisis to a specific bad actor offer a villain to blame, someone to potentially hold responsible. The conspiracy theories that are the most effective and plausible are usually based on some grain of truth and connect to some existing set of beliefs around the world. For example, someone who distrusts the government may be more inclined to believe someone who posts negatively about a government agency. Other rumors alleged that the elite and wealthy Maui residents were behind the fires so that they could buy the destroyed land at a discount price and rebuild a smart city and expand their investment portfolios. National Public Radio reported there was the one about the government. In some versions it was the US, in others a foreign government, using energy beam weapons to start the fire. Others blamed Oprah, meaning Oprah Winfrey, the wealthy media mogul, and falsely claimed she was making a land grab. Still others claimed the fires were a cover-up for military malfeasance. They also reported the theory that there was a niche narrative that this was the beginning of turning Maui into a smart city. Kyle Van Fleet stated this. This is referring to the other conspiracy theory. This one claims efforts intended to reduce traffic and increase walkability are actually a plot by governments to use climate change as a pretext to turn cities into open-air prisons. One YouTube posting stated, "You're telling me that these cheaper lower middle-class houses burnt down directly across the street and all of the mansions are still standing?" referencing aerial imagery taken of the destruction. Some celebrities were even accused of being involved in the premeditated destruction, such as Oprah Winfrey. But Oprah jumped into the fray to help. Oprah stated, "At each hub, I asked people to tell me what they needed. I'm just trying to stay open and flexible. I'm just trying to provide and be open wherever possible. Each day presents itself with a new set of challenges and obstacles to try to overcome." Another person posted, "Oprah, you have 1,000 acres. Lahaina is 1,600 acres. You could give up only half your acreage and provide housing for probably all of the displaced residents. there's a simple solution. The land you bought was illegally sold because it is illegally occupied. This is the right thing to restore justice. The people of Maui are still reeling from the Great Fire, which killed many and destroyed even more lives. But people are slowly putting their lives back together. The $3 billion in federal support is still coming in, which drained resources from the victims of Hurricane Helene. It looks like the illegal aliens have not suffered. We hope the survivors on Maui, as well as those from Helene, can put their lives back together. In October 2023, ABC News, not exactly a reliable source, said the number was revised from 385 missing down to 66. However, initially in Maui, between 1,300 and 1,400 people have been reported as missing. Some estimates are that over 1,000 children alone have not been found. We still do not have an exact number of those missing from Helene. The federal government has not been very forthcoming in either disaster regarding casualties. As of September 2nd, 2023, the reports are that more than 2,200 structures were in fact destroyed across 2,170 acres in the Lahaina fire, according to an August 12th estimate of the damage from the Pacific Disaster Center and Federal Emergency Management Agency, featuring on the Maui Now. In the town of Kula, 678 acres were affected by the fire in the area. According to the agencies, the locals fear that there was a conspiracy to devalue the property and make it uninhabitable for those living there, forcing a short sale, with billionaires waiting in the wings. According to Forbes, as of now, 37 billionaires who make up 0.0003 of the population own 5% of all Hawaiian land, 11% being non-government owned land, roughly 218,000 acres. Here are just a few. This increased tension between poor locals and the wealthy speculators, with Oprah Winfrey buying almost 900 acres that she paid $6.6 million for, added to her 1,300 acres that she already owned for over 2 decades. People grew suspicious after Winfrey's property was unscathed in the disaster. She did provide $10 million of her own money to assist in the relief efforts. Billionaire and Oracle co-founder Larry Ellison bought 97% of Lanai, about 87,000 acres, for $300 million, and built luxury hotels. The locals complain that they cannot build affordable housing. AOL co-founder and Hawaii state native Steve Case holds 57,000 acres, not including his 35,000 acre farm on Kauai, which is leased out for sustainable development projects. One theory is that he also wants to buy the burnt out locations. Mark Zuckerberg paid around $145 million and is building a 1,450 acre private walled-off security cattle farm on Kauai. Jeff Bezos owns a sprawling ranch mansion in Maui. So are wealthy vultures trying to buy burnt-out Maui on the cheap. Right after the fire, residents told USA Today that developers had approached them with offers to buy their property, and it added to the anxiety and grief of losing their homes, animals, and loved ones. Hawaii Governor Josh Green issued the emergency proclamation on August 19th, laying out explicitly that making any unsolicited offer to an owner of real property located in the areas encompassed by United States postal zip codes 96761, 96767, and 96790 on the island of Maui to purchase or otherwise acquire any interest in the real property is prohibited. Stay tuned on this. If we receive more credible updates, just as with Hurricane Helene, we will post another video.
It's just mind-boggling. Just mind-boggling. So much in there to talk about and discuss. Just something stinks like rottenness all over that. So let's go back here and let's talk about this a little bit. First of all, I took a screenshot of this from the video. Interesting. Now, it said that initially in Maui, it was thought between 1,300 to 1,440 people had been reported as missing. So now it's saying that number went down to 385 and then down to 66. I don't think so. And isn't that interesting? 66. They do like their sixes, don't they? We saw that a lot during World War II, during the World War II videos we did with their 6 million, right? They do love their sixes. So no, there's way more than 66 people that are missing there. Okay, now one thing I thought was interesting that the man who did the video brought up, it says one witness claimed this was a direct energy weapon assault. And many people, there were several other people that believed that as well. So there's something I'd like to share with you guys that I found, and this was shortly after the fires broke out in 2023. This is from a woman, her name is Dr. Kathy Forte, and she lives on Maui, and she published this August 12th, 2023. And so just as a refresher and for context, the Maui fires broke out on August 8th, 2023. Okay, August 8th. Keep that in mind in just a little bit. So just 4 days later, she wrote this article. She says, I live in Maui and I'm okay, but I was there in Lahaina that morning and the whole truth is yet to come out. She says, please read my personal story below. I want to thank all of you who have reached out to me from across the world after seeing pictures and videos of the devastating destruction that took place on Tuesday, August 8th, which destroyed the old historic town of Lahaina. And then she also talks about it rampaged through agricultural lands. There was actually another fire in upcountry, up near like the Kula Lodge, the Kula, Kula area. So apparently I think I'm missing part of that, but she now gets into her story of what happened that morning on August 8th. So she was with a friend of hers, and apparently this friend was tempting her with lunch at Cool Cats, one of my favorite eateries in Old Lahaina, she said. So I said, okay, let's go. She said the 30-minute drive was without incident, without wind, and without any warning advisories. As soon as we reached Lahaina, all power got zapped. Cell phone, internet, traffic lights, GPS, and the 911 emergency system, which is never supposed to go down, and the power outage caused every store and shopping mall to immediately close. Nothing was open. So catch that again. The 911 emergency system, which is never supposed to go down. Okay, it's supposed to be a separate thing. Went down. And then, right after, she says, then the winds came in, bringing with it a rare, rainless hurricane with gusts from 60 to 80 miles per hour. Trees became uprooted and branches were coming down everywhere, along with power poles. I heard a crash behind me, and where I was less than 30 seconds prior was a crashed and uprooted tree. It was time to get out of there. She says no evacuation sirens ever went off that day when the fires began. They failed as well. My friend and I had to escape through the back road going all the way around the island as all traffic was blocked in the other direction. Many might not have known about this back route since GPS was down. It's mainly just a route that the locals would have known about, that had been there for some time. She says, these fires were indeed strange. The night before, Both my friend and many others claim to have had very restless sleep. I personally experienced a strange flooding wave of energy in my head, almost like seizure activity, which I have come to identify as dark energy coming in. This flooding energy continued on and off the next morning, more so when I was in Lahaina. This told me that there was directed energy involved in what was occurring. This was not just a random act of Mother Nature. It reminded me, she says, of the strange fires in Paradise, California, a few years back, which swept through and wiped it off the map. Their only crime, Paradise, California, was getting in the way of a high-speed railway project slated to come through the town. A little bit of history to draw your own conclusions. Historic Lahaina is the key harbor seaport on the island. The Lanai ferry goes back and forth from there. All the commercial snorkeling and scuba diving firms set sail from there, and tourists flock there in daily droves. And she's right. The problem with historic Lahaina was that it had a large, old Hawaiian community that was in the way of the developers. Now it's like ground zero. So the little bit I've been able to research about Lahaina is it's a historic Lahaina used to be where the royal alii, all of the chiefs way back anciently, before any of the missionaries came in or the colonizers, anything like that. It was a playground. It was like where they had where they would get together and they would surf and they would hang out and get together. It was for the old alii chiefs, and so there were certain parameters put in place down there. Like, for example, nothing over 2 stories could be built down there. And there was a large old Hawaiian community down there. And sadly, many of those people didn't even have insurance on their businesses. So, and if I understand correctly, I don't think that outside developers could come in and buy up there. If I'm understanding that correctly, I could be wrong on that, but I think like you had to be Hawaiian. I'm not sure what the rules were there. So again, she says the problem with historic Lahaina was that it had a large old Hawaiian community that stood in the way of the developers. But she said now it's like ground zero, declared a disaster area, and federal and state rules are probably going to be tossed aside. It's a toxic mess. They will undoubtedly blame it all on climate change. Keep that in mind. They will undoubtedly blame it all on climate change and welcome in the developers to totally bulldoze and level it. All over the island, tracts of land are being bought up by corporations, and no one knows who is behind them. Foreign interests? The people on this island are beginning to put the pieces of the puzzle together and suspect that this was a major power land grab. And these are the local people. In January 2023, there was a Smart City conference where they discussed turning Maui into a 15-minute smart island. Didn't we just hear about that? In January 2023, the fires started August 8th, 2023. So at the very beginning of 2023, she says, there was a Smart City conference where they discussed turning Maui into a 15-minute smart island. Next month, there is a digital summit to discuss turning the island digital and all AI. I kid you not, she says. Fires started in the agricultural lands upcountry first, the breadbasket of Maui, and resources were sent there first. So Lahaina, when it happened, had few resources to fight the wall of fire that swept through the entire area, trapping hundreds who could not get out and sadly perished. No sirens warned them out either. Right now, Maui needs your spiritual prayers more than ever to strengthen the land against these destructive forces. So many people are missing or homeless. We are not out of the woods yet. There are still ongoing fires. Now, again, this was as of August 12th, 2023. I know we're 2 years past that at this point, but I thought it would be helpful to hear from someone who lived there who went through this. Okay. Now, I saw this on one of the Telegram pages I was following. This is a picture of the Maui police chief, and people were I was going to say picketing, but protesting. There we go. They were protesting, and they were asking questions. We want to know why the water was shut off. Why were locals told that the bushfire was 100% contained? Why was Front Street blocked off by police barriers? Why were there no warning sirens? That keeps coming up. There were no warning sirens. Why were the placards stopped? Why did you evacuate tourists and not the locals? Why are you lying about help being on Maui? Okay, and that's true because during that time, I was learning because I had a friend of a friend who lived on Oahu, and so I was getting information from her. And the news that was coming out at the time is that FEMA, of course, FEMA gets in there, they land, right? Well, they were turning away boats that were coming from some of the other islands, especially like Oahu, and maybe even the Big Island. But FEMA was turning away boats, I know for sure from Oahu, that were coming from the other islands that were laden with water and food and other necessary items for the Maui residents. So when they were trying to come by boat, and I don't know if they would have been trying to come to the Lahaina side, I don't know how they would have been able to do that, but there is another harbor called Mahalea, I believe, which is kind of at the juncture where West Maui, and East Maui meet, kind of like where the Maui Ocean Center is. There's another harbor over there, but apparently the boats were being turned away, and they were not allowed to unload the supplies. One would have to ask why. Okay, and then I remember hearing similar reports of FEMA doing this during the Hurricane Helene disaster as well. Why is FEMA turning away help from people trying to bring help in? I'll tell you why, because they are not for the people. They work for the Committee of 300. Okay. And I saw this quote. It says, at the time, it says, "The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off." And isn't that the truth? Okay, this is a man by the name of Brent Westbrook, and this was during the same time. He's a project manager at Brent Digital Media Limited. He says that this must have been the fastest time ever for a book from start to publication. He said on Amazon, published on the 10th of August, there was a book called Fire and Fury. The Story of the 2023 Maui Fire and Its Implications for Climate Change by Dr. Miles Stone. Okay, again, the fires started August 8th, 2023, and 2 days later, on August 10th of 2023, this book gets published on Amazon. The Story of the 2023 Maui Fire and Its Implications for Climate Change. What did Dr. Kathy Forty said? She said, oh, they're going to blame it on climate change. Are you starting to see the puzzle pieces come into, beginning to come together? Are you starting to see the picture here between, the Maui fires, the Paradise, California fires, the Malibu fires, the Hurricane Helene incident, and then at this point it's going to be fill in the blank with XYZ natural disaster, because they, by all intents and purposes, it does seem to be that their 15-minute city plans are well underway. So do not be surprised if we continue to see this pattern of whole cities being burned out, real estate developers coming in, buying up the land for pennies on the dollar and turning them into smart cities, because I believe that this is all part of the agenda, which we're going to see more of in just a little bit. Okay, I want to explain what I said earlier about why this particular fire affected me so much on such a personal level. First, before I switch back to my my bigger screen, here, just keep in mind for a second that where I have the purple rectangle, this is West Maui. This is the part of Maui that was affected by the fires. And it's just so strange because the east side of Maui continued on like they do every day. It was the most bizarre thing. So all of this was focused on West Maui. So let me come over here for a minute. So I don't often get very personal on here because this channel is not about me. I'm not vlogging like some of the other YouTube channels. This isn't my personal vlog. This is uncovering hidden history. But in this instance, the two kind of dovetail together. And this hit me so hard because, number one, because since about 2005, my family and I at the time had the funds to be able to go over to Maui almost every year. And because I homeschooled our children, we would stay for about a month at a time. And so we would study for history. We would study the history of the Hawaiian Islands, which, all of the ugly that came with it, with the missionaries that came over, and then the colonizers that came, the provisional government, what they did to Queen Liliuokalani, like we covered it all. And then for science, we would study the ocean. I mean, I have been on countless boat trips out of the Lahaina harbor because I love to go whale watching. That was kind of my thing that a treat that I would give myself when we would go over, is I would go out on the water. And I had I've had a handful of incredible experiences with whales that would come up and hold our boat hostage, and sea turtles that, when I was snorkeling, I would turn around and have a sea turtle right there, kind of stalking me and observing me. And yes, I was a good girl. Let me make sure to be clear, I didn't touch anything, because it's illegal to touch any of the wildlife or sea life in Maui, and I didn't. But when you have things like that happen to you, where you've got wild, untamed creatures that choose to interact with you, I mean, it changes you, right? You're never going to go back to SeaWorld again, because it just completely changes you. And we just had so many happy memories over there. Now, the last time that I personally had gone was 2017. And then in 2020, I had gone through a divorce. And so I life has changed since then. 2020, life changed for so many of us. Luckily, it was amicable. And, my former spouse and I are on good terms. We co-parent our children very well. And I'm very glad that their father is able to, was able to continue taking them over there. But they happened to be over there during the Maui fires. They had already been there 1 week, and they were on their second week when the fires broke out that Tuesday. And I'm just going to show you a map in a little bit of where they were, but they were stranded. And what I find interesting is when I, was able to talk to, especially my oldest daughter, after they had come home and we were kind of debriefing, she said some things I found interesting. The night before the fires, on Monday the 7th of August, she also did not sleep well. She tossed and turned. She said she had weird dreams. She said she had almost a migraine headache. She had a tremendous pressure in her head out of nowhere. Like she couldn't, there was no explanation for it. And it had come on somewhat suddenly. And then she had said, as we talked about this theme about the warning sirens not going off, and she said, it's the weirdest thing, Mom. She said, the week before, the Monday before, during the first week they were there, she said, the sirens went off. They were tests. They run tests once a week, is what she had told me. But yet, the second week on Tuesday, the 8th, no siren sounded to warn anybody of what was happening. And so I had talked to them on that Monday, the 7th. And then because I don't watch TV at all, I got a phone call from some friends here saying, Anna, have you seen what's going on in Maui? And I was like, no, what's going on? Because they knew that my children were there on vacation with their father. And so they began to tell me and send me some images as it was happening. And I refused to turn on the TV because I know why the media, keeps replaying images over and over and over. And I could not afford to go into trauma at that time. I did not want to become terrified by the images I was seeing. I had to literally just pull in and just pray. And so I immediately tried calling my daughter and tried calling her father. I tried calling the other children, and nobody was answering. And so I was really fighting panic because I didn't know if they were okay. Now, thank goodness, later that afternoon, about 4 o'clock my time, I got kind of a broken phone call from my daughter. She and her dad had been going around the area where they were staying, and they had found a high hill to go up, and they were literally up there just standing in a circle with the phone in the air, trying to see if they could get any bars at all. I think they had like one bar on their phone. And so she's like, Mom, I just want to let you know that we're okay. But she said, we have no power, we have no internet, we have no self-service. She goes, I'm surprised we were even able to get this one bar. And she goes, but she said, we're okay. And she said, I just wanted you to know that what was going on, just in case we can't get any more calls out. And sure enough, that was, it was a very brief conversation. At least I knew that they were okay, but I didn't hear from them for the next 4 days. And so this is very, very emotional, and I'm trying really hard not to cry, because it still makes me cry when I think about it, when I look through the pictures and such. So anyway, it was terrifying. And so let me come back over here, and I want to show you where my children were at. So again, so now, because I wasn't watching the news, I had a very good friend who had a long-time childhood friend living on Oahu. And so she reached out to her friend and explained the situation, and that, my children were trapped over there. And the children and their father happened to be staying north of Lahaina in a little town called Napili. And so basically my friend was getting updates from her friend on Oahu, because we trusted that more than we trusted, what was coming from the news agencies. So her friend on Oahu was giving her information as the other islands were getting it from the news, their local news, and what they were hearing. And so you can see from this map where all the red triangles are. This is on Highway 30, and you can see that all of where those triangles are in the purple, that is where the fires were. And so, and then it looks like to the right there were some fires over there near the Ma'alea harbor as well. So all of that road was closed down. And like I said, my children happened to be north of Lahaina, up here where Napili is. So kind of on the north, kind of on the north part of West Maui. And so they had no, like I said, they had no power, they had no internet. My oldest daughter and her dad took turns throughout the day going out to the car, starting the car, to charge their cell phones so they could at least keep their cell phones charged. But yeah, and pretty soon the food in their refrigerator, they told me later, started to go bad, because it's very warm there. It's warm, very warm, and it's humid. And so without power, the food starts to spoil quickly. So what they kind of ended up doing was they started eating the freezer stuff. They had a barbecue grill where they were staying, and so they were out barbecuing pizzas on the grill. And then there were a couple of resorts up in Kapalua. I think Kapalua had the Ritz-Carlton up there, and they had backup generators, and so they opened kind of refugee centers. So they would go up to one of them for breakfast in the morning, just to get a little bit to eat, and then go to the one up in Kapalua for dinner. And they did this for 4 days, and drinking water out of the tap. Luckily, the tap water was still running, but it was a nightmare. But they were okay. They were kept safe. And then because everybody in the place where they were staying, it was like a small kind of private condo place. It wasn't like a resort. There's no resort there. But so they and the other people staying there would kind of gather in the evenings out down near the pool just to kind of talk and, have you heard anything? Well, have you heard anything? Just trying to compare notes because they had no idea what was going on outside of their area. All they knew is they had no power, they had no internet, they had no cell reception. And so they couldn't get out because all of the roads below were closed because of the Lahaina fires. So finally, on like the fourth day when they had the fires about 80% contained, they opened the main road to let the people out. Front Street was still completely blocked off, of course, but they let people go through the main, Highway 30 back through. And my family just said that they were in complete shock because, again, they didn't really know the extent of what was going on because they'd been completely isolated. So on the fourth day, as they're leaving and driving south from Napili and down the highway and looking at what they could see, they just all began to weep because of the devastation of the fires. Like it just marked us all very powerfully, as it did everyone who was staying there, tourists as well. But, at least the tourists ended up getting to go home. But this has been a living nightmare for all of the locals, that this is what they've had to deal with and live with, and especially the people who lost their homes. It's like the nightmare that they never get to wake up from. And so it's been devastating. It's been devastating for the locals on West Maui. But they were able to get through, and then they were able to get over to East Maui and find a place to stay. And it was just total shock because East Maui, nothing had been touched over there. So it was like normal compared to what they had just, my family just lived through the past 4 days. And so then the kid's dad was able to get flights arranged, to try to get onto the next flight to come home. So that took another day or two. But at least, they were over on the east side where there was electricity and food and running water to take showers and such like that. But yeah, it was pretty bad. Let me go back here again. I had an opportunity at the beginning of this August 2025, and I'll try to lean in. I know my lighting is getting a little weird. I have afternoon sun coming in. I had the opportunity early August to go back to visit Maui. A friend of mine had asked me to come and help. This person was having some medical issues, and the rest of their family wasn't coming until the following week. And so I just really felt like the Most High was in it. I was full of trepidation. I wasn't sure I wanted to go. And again, I personally had not been there since 2017. But I went, and like I said, I was there, I want to say August 2nd through the 9th, I think, somewhere around there. And so it was kind of like a working vacation. But we did some, driving around to look at the different areas, and they had part of Front Street open. It was the northern part where there used to be a restaurant there called Canoes. And so we just kind of drove down that portion of Front Street that had been opened. And it's I don't even have words to describe. It's exactly like the pictures I showed you from the Malibu fire. In fact, let me go over here. This is from the Malibu fire, but what I saw in Maui was exactly the same thing, where on the left side of Front Street, there was all of these burned out houses, burned down to the stone, the rock foundations for the most part. And you'd see this for 2 or 3 houses, and then, 3 or 4 houses over, there would be a completely intact house, completely not even touched. And so it looked a lot like this picture here, where you would have burned out house, burned out house, burned out house, completely intact house. It defies, it's confusing, because you don't expect to see that with a wildfire. You're expecting a wildfire is going to decimate everything, not burn, not be discriminating in how it burns. And so having seen these, I knew exactly what it was I was looking at. And the anger that I felt was, I felt a rage that I'm not usually a person that feels rage, but it just made me so angry. And some other things that I thought were, and it was interesting because while I was there too, on the 8th, they all were celebrating. It was the 2nd anniversary of remembering the fire and all those that perished or that are still missing. So it was very bittersweet and very painful as well. And so it says, in total, fire burned more than 17,000 acres, costing around $5.5 billion in estimated damage. And it says the crosses are displayed at a public memorial. It's near the Lahaina Bypass Freeway. So it's a public memorial to wildfire victims. And it was erected on October 5th, 2023. And so there's just a short video that I would like to show you regarding that.
Ribbons now adorn the fence at the Lahaina Bypass, which earlier this week was marked by 115 crosses. The memorial is a tribute to the deceased and those unaccounted for. And KIT4's Jeremy Lee spent a day with those behind the effort. He joins us live from the Lahaina Bypass. Jeremy, good morning.
Good morning, Leah. This is such a significant place behind me. You see the bypass, and this is believed to be the origin of the fire. The morning fire took place just behind me now. You see there are crosses back there. I'll show you those up close in a second. But the bypass surrounds Lahaina town and then of course leads to central Oahu. I'm standing on Lahaina Luna Road, and behind me is the origin point, which is about 1.2 miles away from Front Street. Of course, the early morning fire, then the flare-up at 3:30 p.m. It is here that those who put up the memorial decided to mark and revere those who had passed and those who had yet to be found.
We just felt that they needed a place to mourn or go put lays on, or just know that they're being honored and that their loved ones are not going to be forgotten. It's going to be a long time before we can take care of everybody properly. We can't get ashes out to sea through Lahaina anymore at this juncture.
We thank God for Cinia because she's a florist, so she knows how to make these, and she had all the material, the wire and things to get it going.
And somebody left a card probably for a loved one.
That night they came up with 53 crosses, and Sunya and I hung them with our family so that President Biden could see at least a small representation of the people lost. We said we have 115 crosses, but we've made 135 crosses. So we know that number is going to jump up daily. And then our goal today is to have yellow ribbons for those missing. And now we're hearing that it could be as high as 1,000 there as well. And then we also have small crosses to represent children.
We all can get together and come as one. And that's what we need.
About the town, it's definitely symbolic, and I hope that everybody has time to process this, because I think most of us haven't.
Okay, and so here's some more memorials. I like that these, in the meantime, somebody has put up like placards with pictures. And boy, does it hit you when you see the faces. It's not just a yellow ribbon or a cross with their name on it. It's pictures of loved ones that are, no longer here. It's very, very powerful. And here's some more of that fence. And you can see that rainbow in the background. That's all I have for you. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. So sorry for being a Debbie Downer. Okay. I love you all, and I will see you for the next video. Have a blessed week and take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.